everybody, and welcome to another live show. I am back in the studio now, and we're trying a different time because we never know when people want to watch a live show and when they don't. So everybody be sure and post those burning questions down there in the comment section below on whatever platform you're watching this on. And we promise that one of these times, even though we say we're going to do this all the time, that this will actually be up on the podcast channel. So, Travis, what news item struck your fancy this week?
There's been a lot going on, and it covers a wide range. One of the more interesting headlines I read was about the Prius Prime being the greenest vehicle you could buy today.
I was also shocked by that, and I was shocked by how far down on the list the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y actually were. But we should probably say why that is. The assumption from greenercars.org is that they want to take a holistic life cycle view of the vehicle, including not just the CO2 to create the vehicle, but the environmental impact of shipping things around the world and its future recycling and disposal based on current estimates, I guess you'd say. So by that measure, the bigger the battery, the less green it is.
Yeah, and they also looked at overall efficiency, and the Prius Prime does incredibly well with efficiency numbers, as on top of everything else. The one thing I noticed is that the Lexus RZ Subaru Solterra BZ4X combination was ordered a little bit differently. The RZ was higher up, and I their explanations and their metrics are not the most in depth, but for that one, I couldn't figure out for the life of me why it was, because seemingly that's at least the heavier version because it's got a little bit more feature content. But either way, it's still a good showing, but a lot of that probably has to do with the small battery.
Yeah, the Busy Forks was a little lower because if I recall correctly from the launch of the Lexus RZ, the Lexus has more post-consumer content recycled stuff inside because it's more expensive, and those things are more expensive, but they can do more of them in luxury vehicles. That's why it scores higher, I believe.
Okay.
I think the Model 3 is a little lower on the list because its battery is imported from China. So there's certain import, the trucking of that. Although I don't know if I buy that explanation because the RZ is made in Japan. So they still have to sail across the ocean. I don't know exactly there. There wasn't a world of difference, but it basically did track like baby battery EVs. So it was, the Prime and RZ followed by the EV Mini. Then we had the Elantra Hybrid, the regular Prius, the RAV4 Prime, the Kona EV, and then pretty much all the other hybrids and plug-in hybrids filtered into that list there somewhere. So that was kind of a interesting thing. What I was interested by this week was, of course, the news that, there's going to be the Ford Charge Connector that you can actually pre-order now. Do you know anybody that's pre-ordered their Charge Connector?
I don't know.
No. Edgar,
but
who's on the
everyone
other
who
side of
has
that wall,
one should.
They should. And so if you're listening to this and you haven't done it, you have until the end of June to pre-order. Otherwise, you just have to pay for it. And if you buy your Mach-E after June, it's another reason to run out and buy one, I guess now. If you buy your Mach-E or Lightning after June, you also have to pay for the connector. So it's just these early ones. Edgar, who's on the other side of that wall, he has a Mach-E. Actually, it's outside plugged into our office DC or our office AC charger. And he ordered his. Thankfully, the day that I saw the news article, I forwarded it to him. He's going to get his in late May, early June. But I understand now the wait is like 6 months.
So that's the other thing. If you're not on the list right now to get a free one, not only are you going to have to pay for it, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. So it just benefits you now to hurry up and get on the list.
It's gonna be a long one. Moving on to other EV news here. The other thing that struck me interesting this week was, of course, the proliferation of the NACS connector. The NACS war is over. NACS has won. But here are some interesting details, I think, when we're framing this discussion, because there's already some revisionist history going on out there. According to the DOE, and the revisionist history is, we all need to have NACS. We all need to relocate our charge ports to the rear driver's side of the EV because Tesla won. All those charging stations out there are designed for Teslas. So there we go. Not entirely true. 164,000 public charge points in the United States, according to the DOE, as of third quarter 2023. So this is not current. This is a few months old.
Yep.
Of those, 115,000 were just J1772. So most of the charging infrastructure is level 2. And that sort of makes sense because when I rolled through those numbers, it appears that 30 to 35% of charging is on the go, quote unquote, at level 2. So 5 to 10% is DC fast charging, somewhere in that range. Most charging happens at home with whatever connector you got at home. And then about 30% is at the mall, at the office, the charger down the street from the office because you don't have one at the office, that kind of charging. And
Yeah.
by and large, those are all J1772. So the interesting thing is, I found, is that if you are DC fast charging your EV, which according to the numbers is about 5 to 10% of charging sessions, only about 80% of EV owners will ever DC fast charge their EV, according to the numbers. So decent percentage just never do it.
Yeah.
We have changed our world on the head for this 5% use case scenario, which I do find just an interesting statistic. Like, don't get me wrong, I think NACS is better. It's the better connector. It makes sense to use. We should have done it from the beginning, but we're so far into this J1772 thing that it's going to be this kind of mess. So 164,000 public charge connectors, 24,000 of them are Tesla. Only 15,000 of them are NACS connectors. So only 15,000 of those are the ones you'll be able to use with your Ford versus 14,300 CCS connectors that you could already use with your Ford. So it's really not for the Ford customers, it's a big deal. But if you're out there going, should I A or should I B for the 5% that I use the car? Not a huge difference. But for the 30% where you're on the go charging, that 30% of the time, you're going to have to use an adapter with not only your Tesla, but now with your Ford and your GM. I just find that hilarious for some reason. Also, the DOE is projecting that there will be significant growth of the now dead walking CCS network in 2024. So it outpaced Tesla last year, 14% growth versus 8% growth on the Tesla network. And it's scheduled to outpace Tesla by a wider margin in 2024. It's supposed to grow 20%. So by the end of this year, there will more likely be more CCS connectors than NACS connectors in the US, very strangely.
And it's just that weird carryover.
Yeah, weird carryover. And even apparently when we finally will see native NACS connectors on Fords and GMs, a lot of estimates are actually projecting that we will still see faster growth on CCS, even though you cannot buy a new CCS car at that point.
A lot of those projects are already in the works, and orders have been made, and permits are pulled. So
yep, exactly. Hit it in one. So at any rate, that's my fun news there. So thanks, Keaton, for the super chats. Let's dive into the comment section, and you can answer this one. When are we driving the Lincoln Nautilus?
Next week. So it's coming up. We'll be behind the wheel, and hopefully a video shortly to follow. Obviously, we just have to be careful with the rules around when we can release things, but as soon as we can, we'll have something for you.
Yep. And what is the most interesting thing of the Nautilus for you so far?
Honestly, it's going to be my first time behind the wheel of a Lincoln, and so it's one of those. There's a lot of vehicles out there. There's a lot of brands, so I'm just looking forward to seeing what this offers and kind of what the vibe is. I mean, every manufacturer has their own feel to it. So I'm coming in pretty fresh, and I'm looking.
So you've
forward
seen
to
the Nautilus. You've seen the Lexus RX. Which one's prettier?
Exterior, interior.
2 scores. You could choose separate ones for each.
I'll probably lean towards the Nautilus at this point. It's nothing against the Lexus.
For the record,
RX
there was no coaching in advance.
No, of course not. No, the RX is not an unattractive vehicle. It's just a little bit more unusual.
And
so
we have one this week.
It's going to take somebody who wants to lean that direction, and I don't know. It's maybe not my perfect setup. So nothing against the Lexus, but I'd probably lean Nautilus. But as far as buying one, I'll drive the Nautilus and get back to you.
Yep. So I think I'm team Nautilus as well, both on the interior and the exterior. I am intrigued to see how people react to made in China versus made in Japan. There's obviously a lot more political baggage with Lincoln making EVs, or well, not EVs, sorry, making the Nautilus specifically in China.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say on this particular front is that the reason the Nautilus is being made in China is because Lincoln sells a lot of vehicles in China.
Mhm.
And the reason that it's possible to make in China, period, is that currently Ford actually sells more vehicles made in the US sold in China because they actually export vehicles to China than the reverse. And the Nautilus would not be possible if it was any other way. So that's the one disclaimer I would put on that one. It's a 27.5% tariff to import a car from China to the US, but you can trade one for one. So for every vehicle you send to China and sell there from the US, you can then import
Mhm.
one Chinese made car into the US without paying a tariff. So the only way this works is Ford has to continue selling American made cars in China. So that's
Yeah.
there. Here's a good one. I have actually have not heard an update on the Signia. I'm assuming that we're going to be driving it soon.
It should be
Uh,
sooner than later. Yeah.
it's that Toyota event we're going to in
Yes.
what,
Couple
March, April.
weeks.
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somewhere
It's gonna be a
along
busy
there.
trip, but looking forward to it.
Yeah. This is a good one, actually. Thanks for the other super chat there, Keaton. So, updates on Grand Cherokee L and Gladiator. We know that they're coming because Grand Cherokee is the obvious next step, and Gladiator's already been on some dealers sell sheets basically for what's coming up to the dealers. We don't know specifically, and we do know, however, that it's probably not going to be this calendar year, is my guess. There's some flex on that. It could be late this calendar year. Jeep and Chrysler, et cetera, that whole portfolio of companies, they usually do these backgrounder style events. We have some Dodge news coming up. It's a good shout out to the Dodge news coming next week. So if you are listening to this now and you are interested in the future of blank Dodge that we cannot discuss here, I know about it and I can tell you early next week. So stay tuned. But they usually have these events where they talk about what's coming late in the year. So that Dodge news is coming late this year, mind you.
Mhm.
At some point over the next month or two, we would hear if there's going to be any change to the Jeep lineup in North America. And we really haven't heard anything other than the pricing adjustments on Grand Cherokee, et cetera. So my guess would be that we will hear something about it either late this year or early next year for 2025. Let's move along here. Here we go. This one. This is an interesting one. And let me know what you think about this one. Do you think that Tesla will lose their appeal because they're opening the network?
I think it will be a slight ding, I guess, to the overall popularity of the Tesla because it will not have that same advantage. However, it's going to be years, I think, before that really takes place
Mm-hmm.
because most folks who are looking at buying an electric car have heard Tesla as the number one name for years and years and years, and it's going to take many more years for it to lose that number one status. It's
Mm-hmm.
the only one you can take a road trip with, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it will, but I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to have any more effect than the growth of EVs in general, because there are a lot
Mm-hmm.
more competitive options. When the Model 3 came out, it was a Model 3 relief. That was kind of where things were sitting, and that was a much easier decision. Now we have the Model Y, but you have the ID4. You've got, honestly, every manufacturer has that crossover style, Prologue and Blazer, etc. So I don't think it's going to make a huge impact, but it certainly will be a knock to Tesla. And that's why I think one of the big things with opening the network is that they have to make money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're set up to do so. And that's just going to help, I think, their business overall, even if it's not specific to the car sales.
Yeah, and that profitability is a question. It's definitely going to generate a lot of revenue. We just don't know how much profit it will actually generate in a way.
Well, and
As
on that
as
note,
a
with EV profitability, there's conversations right
Mhm.
now. I saw, honestly, within the last hour, it sounds like Fisker's currently in talks with Nissan, trying to get a helping hand. What
Yep.
are your thoughts on that one?
I'm gonna be interested to see if Nissan wants to do that after their sort of debacle with Mitsubishi. If they're gonna want to, how much they can actually afford and how much they're willing to do. There, it sounds kind of like it might be some sort of licensing or cross licensing arrangement there
Mhm.
with Fisker. I have this suspicion that things are going to go pear shaped. A little quick, especially for a brand that named a car a pear. Um,
Yeah,
the problem at
and
Fisker
announced
seems
more
to,
vehicles last
yeah,
year for many years out. It was,
right. The
yeah, it
problem
was
with Fisker
unusual.
seems to be that they have suspended all of their filings. So like they haven't even completed their fiscally required or legally required filings with the government yet because they have decided that they were wrong and they need to restate them and basically finances are going all kinds of wrong.
Yeah.
So we don't even know how bad it is because they should have filed those statements by now with the SEC, and we just don't know. So my guess is that Nissan could do some due diligence here and find out that it's worse than believed. Um,
Yeah.
Before we get to this question, though, since you are a Tesla owner, so for people that don't know,
Mhm.
Travis has a Model 3. So how do
Mhm.
you really feel in your heart of hearts about pulling into that Tesla station and there's a Ford Lightning occupying 2 charging spots, and there's a Mach-E that's been hanging out for an hour, and then next to that, there's an ID.4 charging super duper slow?
Yeah, honestly, that's going to be super frustrating. And it's not even just as a Tesla owner, but it's been an exclusive network. And so you know that the vehicle pulling in, being another Tesla, is A, going to work. B, that you know that the network or the route planning has already been optimized in a very good way so that it's trying to keep
Mhm.
that vehicle there for as short a period of time as possible. And then you know the charging speed is going to be over 150 kilowatts.
Yep.
That just means that if you I don't live in an area where you wait in line, and obviously there are lots of articles about waiting in line at Tesla's
Mhm.
superchargers. It's really only a few areas where
Yep.
that happens, but
We
if you
found
end
one
up
of those,
pulling in,
remember, in Seattle.
yeah, no, it happens. It's just not on
Yeah.
the regular. So
Yeah.
uh, it's going to be frustrating, especially the two spot pull in situation. You know, as
Mhm.
Tesla and installs more version 4 superchargers, that will alleviate some of that. But they're not going to go in and start replacing, version 1,
Yeah.
version 2, and version 3s. So
Right.
that one's going to be tough. But like you said,
And that is a
it's only
question.
about
I
5 or
do
so
kind of
percent.
wonder. I do kind of wonder, do you think we will see longer cables at V3 stations? Because the V3s are going to hang out for a really long time in the network.
Yeah, I mean, they just got put in, all things considered.
Mhm.
Um, I would hope that with the money coming in from opening the network, that some of that money goes towards something like a longer cable. Obviously, the housing isn't quite built for it. There's a
Mhm.
certain aesthetic that's
Right.
been set up there, but it's going to come down to functionality. And so, if anything, I would guess they start putting more V4 stations at current
Mhm.
V3 stations as kind of add-ons to what's
Yep.
already there.
Yeah, so let's move on here. This is kind of one that I don't know if I have a direct answer to is, should people wait for the NACS native connector? My default answer is no, because we will be living in an adapter world for a long time. And
Mhm.
like I just mentioned, there are 114,000 public uh, J1772 ports in the US and an
Mhm.
estimated 50,000 that aren't even registered with the DOE. So the way this works is if it's a public charge port that people pay for, they are by and large listed with the DOE because those networks report, so that way the DOE knows and can get statistics on it. But like our workplace charging in the back, not listed with the DOE because we don't charge for it. It's not available to anybody that's not an employee. So there's estimated 50,000 of those. It's about 150,000 J1772 ports out there versus just 15,000 NACS connectors and just under 10,000 Tesla destination chargers. And almost all Tesla destination chargers are actually listed with the government because they're
Mhm.
part of the Tesla availability network. So they're actually connected, et cetera, and registerable.
Mhm.
So even if you have an NACS vehicle, you are going to be using an adapter because if you publicly charge, whether you pull into a CCS station, the 14,000 of those that are available versus the 15,000 NACS stations,
Yep.
you're going to use the adapter on half of the DC charge stations available to you. You're going to have to use an adapter on 90% of the level 2 public stations that are available.
Mhm.
If you can't handle an
Like I do
adapter,
now with my Tesla.
exactly, like you do now,
Yep.
like everybody does now. So I would say there's no substantive difference. It just means you're using a different adapter, which, you have one now. You'd use the CCS to, or NACS to CCS adapter. You
Right.
buy the NACS one, you're just going to use the other adapter. So,
Yeah.
um, you're going to have a lot of adapters. It's the way things
My
will
short
be.
answer is if you kept your last car for 10 years, then maybe wait.
Hmm.
If you did not keep your car for 10 years, I don't see a point. If you're leasing a car, there's
Hmm.
zero concern on my end. Like I said, it's going to be a transition piece. Unless you just moved into a new high rise building and all they have are Tesla plugs,
Yep.
then I short term, nothing to worry about. Longer term, that's when you're starting to see a crossover and ultimately
Yeah.
kind of up to you.
And it is interesting that Tesla has not chased that market much,
Yeah.
because I think it's because of the lack of billing for other EVs. So a lot of the destination chargers out there are just free to all, because for businesses to
Yep.
be able to provide a connector that every EV can use on the destination side of things, they have to be free, because there's never really been a mechanism at Tesla to make it any other way.
Right.
There are a few that charge, but by and large, there's not many. So the biggest charging network in the US is ChargePoint by far. They still have more than double the number of connectors that Tesla has, except that they're all this level 2 on the go place at the mall, at the airport, at workplaces,
Hmm.
etc. So I would say if you do live in an apartment, it's most likely it will be some sort of ChargePoint like charger that's being installed.
Yeah.
There are a few reasons for that, just on the mechanics side of actually installing an EV at a business. Um, ChargePoint is really designed for banks and banks of chargers to use one internet connection. So the way that they sell them and the way they set them up, it's just very easy for a business to deal with that. And ChargePoint handles all of the maintenance and administration of them. So you pay ChargePoint a yearly fee as a business. They make sure the
Hmm.
connector works. They make sure the internet connectivity part works and all of that. And that's probably what's going to go on for any of that sort of apartment dwelling kind of thing. So
Yeah.
Kevin, thanks for the super chat. I don't really have an opinion on this. And what's your thought of EV manufacturers offering free charging? I actually think it's better personally if an EV manufacturer offers free or discounted EVSE installation at home.
Yeah, and I have a video coming soon on EV Buyer's Guide about what manufacturers are currently offering as far as that at-home
Hmm.
charging. Honda being one that'll give you credits based on your preference. Do you want to charge more at home, or do you think about it on the road?
Hmm.
I think it's a great idea for the EV manufacturer or the manufacturer in general, because it alleviates some of the concern that people are going to have,
Yeah.
and it says, "Oh my gosh, I had to pay for something on the road. I don't know what this looks like." It's just the fear of the unknown. So they're kind of covering their bases there. But I'm with you. Honda says we'll do on the road or at home, and I would take as much credit as they'll give me to install that EVSE at home,
Yeah.
because that's
And
what
it's
you're
a
going to
bigger
use.
credit.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
Most but not all of the deals that I've seen recently are doing this sort of either or. So you get,
Hmm.
X number of dollars for installing an EVSE at home, X number of dollars for charging on the road. Almost universally, the home charger gives you the bigger credit, and that's probably the better value. Some manufacturers will let you split it. I think Hyundai was doing this thing where you could choose halvesies, half EV charging credit, etc. Um, Bearing in mind that most EV owners, when you really look at the data, most EV
Hmm.
owners don't road trip on a regular basis. They don't drive
Nope.
very far every day. If that describes you, then the home charger is just going to be better value. Would be my thoughts there.
Yeah, not only is
Uh,
your home charger going to be more convenient, it's going to be cheaper because, especially
yeah.
your level three, DC fast charging on the road, it can be pretty expensive. So it's to your benefit to plug in at home.
Hmm. Let's move along to the Crown Signia, because this will answer all of the other little questions about today's main topic being EVs. Well, people are just asking EV questions, guys. So you can post other non-EV questions down there. Crown Signia, and then we will move along to Hyundai Santa Fe. I am really intrigued to see how the Crown Signia does, because it's a weird entry to a segment that Toyota has not really tried very hard in, if I'm being totally blunt,
Yep.
they gave us the Venza. They brought the Venza back, quote unquote. But
Mhm.
Venza was never the same as a Grand Cherokee or a Passport or anything else because it was too small. It's
Yeah.
smaller in a lot of dimensions than RAV4. And so
Yep.
now they're trying it again with the Crown Signia that's sort of Subaru Outback vibes, but they're
Mhm.
saying it's not going to be priced like an Outback. They're saying it's going to be priced more like a Passport. So I don't know. I'm curious on that one. They were very specific and very upfront at that launch that it was Passport and Atlas Cross Sport and Grand Cherokee, not Subaru Outback. And pricing was the reason because it's so much more expensive than the base Outback.
It does
Um,
have a very much more premium feel
yeah,
than the rest of the Toyota lineup.
I agree with that.
It's that weird point where it's not a Lexus, but it's real close to a Lexus, and the Venza kind of towed that line. I'm excited to spend some time behind the wheel of the Crown Signia. I like the way it looks. I like the way the storage is laid out. So for me, if I
Hmm.
was in that market, it would absolutely be near the top of the list.
Yeah,
I haven't spent time with that powertrain either, the hybrid max powertrain, but
not
power
my
and fuel
favorite.
economy are. Hmm?
It's not my favorite. It's a little rough around the
Yeah,
edges.
and I haven't
Um,
had that chance yet, so
yeah.
I'd have to hold back on final judgment.
I do like the wagon format. And I
Hmm.
am surprised that it is so solidly wagon because they're not trying to make a lifted wagon like Subaru did because the ground clearance is kind of low.
Yeah.
So it's really more mainstream luxury wagon, which we haven't had in America in a super long time. I just don't know if it's going to be a big seller.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the Crown right now, the Crown itself is not an enormous seller, and so we're
No.
looking at similar market.
Hmm.
If anything, it might take some buyers from the Crown, but
Yeah.
the hope is that it brings in some of your Outback folks, some of your previous Venza buyers, still looking for a little more practicality out of the machine.
Yeah. So to the next question here, no big changes are expected on the Highlander anytime soon. There have been some assumptions that maybe 2026 we'll see something new, but 2025 is basically 95 plus percent certain that it's going to be no change other than maybe some trim levels, colors, and pricing. That's all it's going
Yeah,
to change there.
Toyota's
This,
been real busy,
yeah, Toyota has been
and
really busy.
the update to the Highlander is the Grand Highlander. Obviously, the Highlander doesn't go away, but that's to me that's
Hmm.
where a lot of the newness in the Highlander name comes from. So it'll be a little while before I think they put significant resources back into the Highlander.
Yeah, so the next question from Seth here is why don't Toyota and Lexus use the hybrid system from the Lexus LS? It seems better in every way than the hybrid Max. I would argue that it is better in every way than the hybrid Max. Two reasons seem to come to mind here. The first one is that they're two different sort of hybrid Max like drivetrains. The iForce Max thing that's rear wheel drive. That's the system that they could have used the one from the Lexus LS in. The main reason they don't is cost. The system in the Lexus LS is fairly expensive, the way that it's designed, and the fact that it uses a multi-speed regular transmission and this multi-path parallel parallel power split hybrid system inserted in there. So there's multiple mechanical paths for the power to travel. Um, it's a very elegant solution, very smooth, very reliable. I like that. I think that's the system they should have used in the Land Cruiser and in a whole bunch of other stuff. But it seems that it's A, more expensive, and B, wasn't really designed for towing and that kind of heavy duty payload mission. So it seems that they've just felt that cost and towing was more important than that. Um,
Yeah,
and coupled
complex
with
doesn't
that
always
one,
lead to robust. So if you're looking at payload and towing, it's not
yeah,
always that simple. But yeah,
coupled with that one is this question from Trenton about Ford's hybrid system. This is a perennial question because there were lawsuits around back and forth between Toyota and Ford. So is Ford's hybrid system actually from Toyota? The answer is no, although in previous years, Ford's hybrid transaxles have been manufactured by Aisin. Um, Ford and Toyota both licensed the core patents for their hybrid systems from Pace, and they sued each other about their hybrid development programs, and it ended up in a patent sharing arrangement. So they settled out of court. They share each other's patents because Toyota had infringed on Ford's patents. Ford had infringed on Toyota's patents. They came away just let's license each other's patents and call it all good. And the key thing there is that Ford, GM, Toyota, and Chrysler all use the same core principle for operation for their hybrid system. So Pacifica, Malibu, Chevy Volt, Ford Escape, Toyota Prius, they all use that same core technology for how they create a parallel hybrid system using a planetary gear set. So substantially similar as far as their internals go.
I did
Moving
have a
along here.
Ford hybrid question from earlier on the EV Buyer's Guide, and someone was asking about a snow vehicle, and they're looking for a hybrid snow vehicle, so between a Kia Sportage hybrid or the Ford Maverick hybrid. And the question was, is the front wheel drive Maverick a concern? Would you say no if you live in the snow? And my answer is absolutely not.
Yeah.
As long as you've got the right set of tires, I that's the direction I'd go, as long as it's not snowing 80% of the year, you know.
That's the tricky, but I would say, how much snow are you worried about?
Yeah.
I would prefer a front wheel
Colorado
drive.
snow.
Yeah.
So
You know, it depends on where you are. I have some good friends that live in Genesee, which is a decent drive up from Denver. And even with snow tires, two-wheel drive can be a little bit tricky in some of those areas that are not well plowed. It doesn't require too much snow for that to be a problem. So even like a RAV4 hybrid with an all-wheel drive system is better than the front-wheel drive setup there. So there's levels. I would say, if you're really worried about it, obviously snow tires. Don't do this with all seasons. But I probably would get the mechanical all-wheel drive system in that segment there. So like Ford Escape hybrid with all-wheel drive, or the Tucson RAV4. That would be my personal thing. If
just comes down to how much snow.
Yeah, and if you're living in a flatter area, like if you live in Chicago, just get the front wheel drive one. If you live in a suburb, the likelihood of you really having a big problem with snow drifts of 12 inches, on your road, you probably shouldn't be driving anywhere in anything. But areas that are well cared for and well plowed and are used to snow, it's probably actually less of a problem. If you want to go to the mountains, that sort of thing, then that's where things could get tricky. That's why specifically I was wondering where they were, because if it's Colorado, that mountain thing, that could be a problem.
Yeah, the daily commute's a big part of that question. Is how much elevation are you dealing with, and how close to the higher elevation are you, because that's going to determine a lot of your snowfall. But in general, I think a small message to folks is two-wheel drive does still work in the snow, and it's one Washingtonians don't get enough, is that you do not always have to have all-wheel drive.
Yes, definitely true. Here's a good question. This is sort of a crystal ball one. Do you see batteries getting bigger in plug-in hybrids? I kind of hope not, because I sort of think that by the time we hit maybe 40 miles of electric range, we've hit the sweet spot.
Yes. First of all, I wish I had a crystal ball prop. That would be fun. We'll make a note of that one. I
do not. I don't have a snow globe either.
That's a shame.
No.
I think we're already in a pretty good place. The only reason, and I'm on record, and I'll go on record, the only reason I would want a larger battery for a plug-in hybrid is to make the all-electric driving experience a little bit more conventional, a little bit more powered by electric, so you get more instant torque. You can run in the electric mode longer, or if your daily commute's electric, you're not sacrificing as much of the performance by having a smaller electric motor, which you can get away with a smaller battery. But I think that really should lean towards specifically more of a performance-oriented plug-in hybrid, so that it's not universal. Everything needs to have a bigger battery. But no, I think any between 30 and 50 is absolutely spot on. 25 works for me. So no, I don't think it's going to be a top priority, and I hope it isn't.
Yeah. To this, Matthew, I would say we have some 40-mile range plug-in hybrids. There's a Range Rover. There's a Volvo S60 plug-in hybrid, 41 miles. You can get 40 miles if you treat your RAV4 Prime gently. But I think the main reason that I don't want a bigger battery in a plug-in hybrid myself is the efficiency side. Like I would prefer a battery that I could exercise fully every day, because if I have a commute of 40 miles on average, which is about the average American commute apparently, um, then I would want to get my plug-in hybrid back home on fumes of electrons. Even if that meant that
Yep.
the gasoline engine kicked on for the last mile, that means that you are getting the most out of this thing. And if you had a 70 mile or an 80 mile range plug-in hybrid, you're dragging this battery around for no particular reason. And so if you could get that really matched to your use case, that's going to be, efficiency heaven, efficiency nirvana. Um, and that's kind of why I really like Toyota's plug-in hybrids. I think that they have hit this target really well with usable range, a solid focus on efficiency. We have the Lexus RX plug-in hybrid here this week, for
Hmm.
instance. Its range is obviously less than the RAV4, but I think it's also in that really good sweet spot, because you get a pretty big thing to drive. It's comfy, it's soft, it's quiet. It gets 35 miles per gallon without trying hard at all. And I can easily get from home to the office on electricity, most of the way from the office home on electricity. I think that's a reasonable thing. How
Yeah.
often do you use gas in your Volt?
Oh, very rarely. Couple times a month,
So you're
and
dragging
that's
around this battery for nothing.
I know, I know. No, if normally it's because if we're going a little bit farther, we take the Tesla so that we are utilizing the most battery on a regular basis. So
Hmm.
yeah, but not everyone wants to juggle that sort of efficiency equation, and I get it. But trust me, when it comes to fueling things up,
Hmm.
it's way cheaper. So for me, it's worth it.
Oh, here we go. Yes, you have to be able to buy one before you can get 40 miles out of the RAV4 Prime. This is very true. And this is a problem that Toyota does not seem to have a good answer to as far as volume. They have promised that this year they will increase volume of the RAV4 Prime. And the rumors that we've heard, mind you, because there is no next generation RAV4 yet, the
Mhm.
rumor is that in the next generation RAV4, starting in 2025, that they will double the production of the RAV4 Prime. I hope that's true. RAV4 hybrids have already been a little bit thin on the ground.
Yeah,
Um, I think that some of the reason for this is that they were prepared for the volume increase initially on RAV4 hybrid, but then it got out of control. So Toyota does have a problem actually building enough RAV4 hybrids as it is. And remember that when we're talking about Toyota's hybrid volume, Toyota sells more motors than Tesla does by a long way, because Toyota sells so many hybrids in the world. And that production ramp up is not an easy thing, as we have seen with Tesla and their need to ramp up their own production and other EV manufacturers, et cetera. So, motors definitely one thing. The other thing that is totally within Toyota's control that I think they've absolutely fumbled the ball on is battery sourcing. Clearly, they could have bought more batteries if they wanted to, and they just didn't. So, I'll give a little, and then they need to take some blame on that one, because
you look at the Jeep 4
they're
by
not
E
trying.
and its
Yeah.
success. There's no reason that the Rav4
Hmm.
Prime would not run circles around every 4 by E option. It's just availability, and beyond availability, it's affordability, because
Yep.
you pay a silly premium for those off the lot right now, whether they be
Hmm.
new or used or certified. You're paying too much. So
Admittedly, the Jeep 4xe system has the potential of being having fewer production constraints in a way, because it has fewer motors, as half the number of motors,
yeah,
actually one third the number of motors. Sorry, one third the number of motors as a Rav4 Prime. So that is the one tricky bit about Toyota's hybrid drive system, is that it is a little bit motor intensive. And if you're using rare earth materials in the motors, neodymium, etc., that is a little bit
yeah.
expensive, which is why not all of Toyota's motors are rare earth motors. Actually, a lot of them are not. They're really trying to focus on mainstream efficiency here, but there's still a production component there. You still have to build motors, and you don't have a factory that was tuned for that. And again,
Right.
Toyota's shifting depending on the model. It's almost approaching half the production volume of some of these vehicles as hybrids. So for something
Yeah.
like the RAV4, that is a huge number of motors that they have to build.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll
It's a good
we'll
problem to
see that
have.
moving. Yeah, we'll see that moving, and I am intrigued to see how exactly this goes with GM's new decision to refocus on hybrids.
Yeah.
Pardon me as I'm
And
like
plug-in
looking around
hybrids.
here. I'm kind of looking at the notes here behind me. So the generator system seems to be a better option than the plug-in hybrid. I would argue no, especially because of efficiency. So, and this is something that we talk about a lot here, is this question of efficiency. If you want an efficient plug-in hybrid, we know how to design them in the US right now, and none of that includes a serial hybrid, whether we're talking i3 BMW range extender thing with a small motor, or an Outlander plug-in hybrid, or the upcoming Ram Charger, which I do think is all kinds of fantastic, just not fantastically efficient.
Mhm.
So, there are reasons to do it and there are reasons not to do it. And, if you're interested in efficiency, it's a reason not to do it. Let's put it that way. Let's move along here to the next one. Someone's also being interested to see what GM will bring. What do you just another crystal ball question? What do you think their first plug-in hybrid will be now that they've decided to recommit to this?
Yeah, it seems like a little bit of a late to the game
Mhm.
adjustment, and therefore the transition needs to be as straightforward as possible. And when I think where can you shove components, I think the biggest option is your biggest vehicles, and so I think they're looking at the large truck, large SUV segment. That's where there's room to stick a battery,
Mhm.
stick an electric motor. So I think we're looking at the truck and large SUV segment. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Silverado or a Sierra being up first, or something like the Suburban or the Yukon Denali.
Mm. I I'm gonna go in a slightly different direction, and I'm gonna hypothesize that maybe the upcoming Equinox will get it
Mm,
first with a rebirth of the Volt system. Because I'm wondering if GM is just going to pull something existing and off the shelf, because the Voltec system in the Malibu, it's not that far removed from when it was in production, the Malibu hybrid.
yeah.
So yeah, they should be
The,
able to
the
dust
question
that
is it
puppy
a
off.
rebirth or redesign? If they're going off the shelf, then
Yeah.
they'll stick to something smaller. I mean, you could almost even see something like the Trax getting a look at it. I don't think it would be quite that model. So yeah, Equinox probably
Yeah.
makes the most sense in the lineup. But
I don't
um,
think there's any room in the tracks to package it somehow.
yeah, you'd have to make an
Uh,
adjustment.
yeah.
And the goal is
Next
no
up,
adjustments. It's too far down.
we have the question all on our lips. When will we drive Traverse Acadia Enclave? And we don't have an answer for that yet, which does surprise me, because
Yeah.
I thought we would have heard something from GM about that by now, since we've already seen them.
Mhm.
But let me just roll through. Yep, no information from them on that yet. We do know that it is going to be in production later in 2024 is all I got from them.
Mhm.
So my guess is maybe summer. April's already filling up. We don't know anything about May's launch schedule, etc. So that's when I think it might happen. What do you think of that new Enclave that has leaked?
Can we pass and then come back to it?
Sure, you
Um,
can.
it,
I will let you look that one up, because it is
no.
quite the
I've
thing
seen
to
it.
behold. Oh, okay.
No, I have seen it. I'd like to pass at the moment. I'd maybe
Okay.
like to see that one in person before I give it a final judgment.
Yeah, I was curious to see what that would look like, because we all knew that the Buick was coming, and then soon we'll see what the Cadillac will look like.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm gonna go on a limb and go that Cadillac's gonna be way more attractive.
I'll second
Um,
that motion.
I really like the Lyric, and I like the Vistic. I think the new Vistic that they've shown is just like chef's kiss fantastic. I hope that the upcoming XT6, which we all know is going to happen, just looks exactly like that, only gas. That's kind of my question for them. The Buick one, I was kind of surprised that it just looks like an overinflated Encore, and I wasn't sure that look was good for something that big.
There's always like a family resemblance, and sometimes they're copy paste, and sometimes when you make something bigger, it doesn't get better. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably one of those situations. It's a little pointy and
Mm-hmm.
swoopy, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, a little torn on that one. So
Yeah.
Matthew's asking why we don't have a long wheelbase V90. I do think that's a snowball in hell's chance. Although I am kind of curious to see what Volvo does wagon wise because they have been so dedicated to the wagon formula and they do sell
Mhm.
well outside North America. I'm assuming they're going to get another go, but I just don't know whether we're going to get that in its
I
next life.
mean, not only do they not sell in huge numbers, I was just looking at the V60 Recharge, and not only are they not really available, they only come in one configuration, the
Yep.
Polestar engineered top end trim, and that just tells you how few they sell. But it
Yep.
also gives me that much more reason to want one. It just
Mm-hmm.
so happens I already bought a new car, so I'll probably be holding off on that one. But I'd love to throw my money at it. It's not in the cards at the moment.
Yeah, it also says something about the enthusiast that's buying the new car because that is certainly an enthusiast new car to be going with the wagon there.
I will pay
Uh,
extra for yellow belts. I mean, you got
that's
me.
true. How about red belts? I do like the yellow
Red
belt.
belts are okay, but I think yellow is more interesting.
A little too try hard on the yellow belt. Uh, let's see here. Speaking of Volvos, Twister is asking us, have we driven the C40 or XC40 Recharge? We have, and there are videos on the channel on both of those. They have
Mhm.
received recently a significant upgrade in the new motor design, which we also find in the Polestar 2. So Volvo is not a company that is afraid of shaking things up, and this is one thing that Volvo has always intrigued me about. The Swedes, they just do things differently than the Germans. So in BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, they will work on changes, they'll bottle them up, and then every 3 years they'll be like, hey, it's a refresh. And Volvo does not do that. Volvo's like, you know what? We're going to give it a new bumper this year. Next year, we're going to give it a new engine. The year after that, we're going to give it some new batteries. Then we're going to give it a new dashboard. And if you hang out long enough, you have a refresh, but they just sort of do it in this like piecemeal
Bits and
year after
pieces.
year fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. So like, no exterior styling changes, but we get new motors and new batteries, etc. And I kind of like that approach because rather than waiting for that new technology, they just do it whenever
Mhm.
it's ready.
And now
It
they have
does
a new
mean,
name,
yeah, it does mean
the
that you have to be careful.
EX40
Yeah, it does
and
mean that you have to be
EC40.
careful
Yeah.
about the reviews. So we don't have a review on the new motor in those models yet. It's coming up, but we have a review of those models with the current interior and current
Yep.
software, and a review of the Polestar 2 with that exact same motor and battery in it.
Right.
So stay tuned. This summer we will definitely have the new rear wheel drive models in from Volvo for test.
Yep.
Um, this is a good one. And I don't know if we have a direct answer to this one, but Juan Carlos is asking, why is Acura reluctant to make rear-wheel drive vehicles? I think it's simply Honda being cheap.
I mean, if you look at the numbers, I don't think they need to, and that's really what it boils down to. There is a different market that Acura doesn't directly compete in on a rear-wheel drive based platform, so it just doesn't make sense to branch out. It's definitely on the conservative end of planning,
Hmm.
and I'd love to see it, and they're certainly capable of doing it. But if you look at Honda and Acura, they are not historically known for their rear-wheel drive platforms.
Nope.
So they've got a winning formula, and unless it starts costing them significant sales, you won't see it happen.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I might argue that it does cost them sales because Acura sales are going nowhere in a hurry. But it would also cost them a lot of money to do anything differently than they are. So they don't have a rear-wheel drive platform to borrow from.
Right.
Rear-wheel drive platforms are very expensive. Just ask Hyundai with the whole Genesis thing.
Mhm.
Genesis is probably going to be on track to lose $10 billion this decade. And Hyundai has the money to spend. They've got
Yeah.
billions and billions that they can just set on fire. Honda does not have billions and billions of dollars to set on fire. And I think that's the core reason. Honda just does not have the resources that other companies have. And they choose to spend the resources they do have on more mainstream products. So Mazda, for instance, has bet the farm on the rear-wheel drive platform that we see. But there's also a reason that we don't see the CX-80 in Europe yet, and the CX-70 has been a bit disappointing in the US, and we aren't going to get a Mazda 6, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because, it was expensive to create the CX-60 and the CX-90. And they've probably got to sell, quite a lot of them to make that kind of work.
Yeah. I mean, we have another Honda question that is definitely more front-wheel drive based. It was a question about the fuel cell EV CRV.
Yes.
And
I will be
just our
driving
general
that
thoughts on
shortly.
that one.
I am a big proponent of fuel cell technology, generally speaking, but I think that it's been handled very poorly by the car companies. And if Honda, Toyota, and Hyundai really gave a crap about hydrogen, we would see Honda fueling stations, Toyota fueling stations, Hyundai fueling stations, where they owned and operated that hydrogen filling station, and they made it work. That's the big bone I have to pick with them. It's like, the Mirai, great car, great landing, not even the wrong airport, the wrong continent. They landed the Mirai on the wrong continent. Americans don't
Yeah.
buy sedans. We don't buy sedans with tiny back seats. Why do we have a
Yep.
sedan? Who knows? It's Japan, the Japanese market. Nexo, great car, great landing. It's a pregnant hatchback SUV thing. That was great. No support from Hyundai on that. It exists because South Korea is a bit more into hydrogen than we are. CRV fuel cell, that is an interesting twist because I had sort of expected Honda to just give us another sedan. This is much smarter to give us the SUV thing. The teaming up with General Motors and building it in the US, also smart. There not being a GM or a Honda fueling station, less smart. So,
I mean, you see it with EV charging. They want to build the car, and that's it.
right.
I can't say I blame them, but like you said, for the moment, it means you're going to have very, very limited success. And then, depending on if there's a specific narrative that wants to be followed, you say no one bought it, nobody bought it. Well, no one can fuel it, but a plug-in really does add to the number of folks who could fuel it if there wasn't a hydrogen fueling station in the near vicinity. It would take a lot less trips out there if you could plug it in at home. And I think it said it ranges about 29 miles, which is great.
Yeah, so it would mean that you'd use considerably less hydrogen. You'd fill up, maybe once a month. It's that sole plug-in hybrid thing. A lot has been said that hydrogen is not efficient. The worst way to look at hydrogen is as an efficiency play, because it's not. You're never going to get as much energy out of electrolyzing water, creating hydrogen, and then fuel selling it back into electricity. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about the fact that you use fewer battery resources. So you're using less lithium. You're driving around a vehicle that is considerably lighter. A Nexo fuel cell has the equivalent of 200 kilowatt hours of usable storage on board, and it weighs 1,000 pounds less, actually 1,500 pounds less than a Honda Prologue. It is considerably lighter. And it fuels in an honest to goodness like 3-4 minutes. Not a problem at all. It's about the fast fueling. It's about adapting to American lifestyles better. But it just needs support. Otherwise, it's going to go nowhere. I would also say it makes the most sense. The best argument for hydrogen is in bigger vehicles, which we're finally starting to see electrified. A hydrogen fuel cell pickup truck or SUV makes so much more sense than a battery model of either of those, because you could get 500 miles of range without having a 4,000-pound battery pack on board. I mean, that's just bonkers. But then it's the where do you fill it problem. And unless someone's going to take the reins in a Tesla-like fashion with hydrogen, you're never going to see it. And it would take a consortium of companies like GM, Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai actually putting Tesla-like budgets behind hydrogen fueling to make fetch happen. and we just don't see it, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just now after each of those manufacturers has electric vehicles on sale and zero of their own electric vehicle charging stations that they decided to get together and create Iona, I think is what it's called, or Iona. And now
Right.
they're going to start producing electric vehicle charging stations, but none of them will do it alone. And so it's going to be a tough sell. Hydrogen has to happen on its own, and then
Yeah.
the vehicles will follow.
And I'm sort of guessing that Iona is going to go nowhere quick somehow. That many companies with that many different philosophies. How much money are they really going to pour into this thing?
Right.
Wouldn't it have been better if Volkswagen had just been like, "Hey, want to buy some shares in Electrify America, and you can just all do this
Yep.
thing," um, or just pour more money into Tesla's network. I can see why they don't want to pour money into Tesla's network,
Yep. Yep.
but until you have that sort of dedication to the network, you're not going to be a thing. And that
Yeah.
goes back to that numbers thing we talked about earlier in the episode. Tesla doesn't really have that many charging stalls. Like, the number of charging stations on the supercharger network is less than the number of CCS stations in the US. When you look at footprint, especially in urban areas, there are more CCS stations. There aren't as many CCS plugs, but there are more stations. And even though we don't DC fast charge that frequently, it's the fact that it works and that you know what you're getting, and it's very fitting of your expectations when you go. That's why we got where we are, and I just don't see Ionity fixing that somehow.
No, probably not.
Let's see here. What do we think about the current state of Stellantis in our market? Sales have been slow, especially with the new Hornet. I actually, for some reason, I don't know why Stellantis is often seen as the canary in the coal mine. They're a huge conglomerate. Their sales were down in 2024, but if you really look at the core numbers, their profitability was through the roof.
Yeah.
Stellantis's gross margin beat Tesla, and that is surprising for a number of reasons. The first thing is because remember that when Tesla reports their gross margin that the industry fawns over left and right, they're like, ooh, Tesla's gross margin. Tesla's the dealer and the manufacturer. Every car company in the United States beats Tesla's gross margin when you look at dealer combined with manufacturer. Honda beats them by a mile when you include the dealer's gross margin. So when you're actually looking at the profitability of the vehicle, every gasoline vehicle in North America is more profitable than any Tesla sold in the US, especially currently with their recent price reductions. But back to the Stellantis thing, they beat those numbers, not including the dealership's 10 to 15% margin. So when you add that, I mean, their margin is absolutely bonkers high. Whether they're worth it or whether you should be buying one, that is a whole separate question. But Chrysler Stellantis has also done this without a captive finance arm in the US. And when you look at where other car companies make their money, they're making it on the fact that when you lease a car, you're leasing it through GM Financial or Honda Financial, etc. Stellantis doesn't do that. They use Santander Bank, and they're the ones that underwrite all the financial aspects of things. They pay Chrysler some money for this, of course, but they're not making all the profit. A lot of that profit's going to a third-party bank. So on the money-making machine that is what a public corporation is supposed to be, Stellantis is incredibly impressive, to be honest. And they also have very little long-term debt. It's almost zero. And that is not the same thing as any other car company on earth right now. Pretty much every other car company has a lot more debt on the books. So as far as financial situation, Stellantis is sitting really pretty. They have a lot of very high profitability products, a lot of very high profitability options. Jeep sells huge numbers right now. Grand Cherokee, Wrangler, they're selling large numbers at very, very high margins and high prices. Obviously, they think they got a little carried away because Stellantis has recently announced that Jeep is dropping the prices pretty substantially, actually. And they will be introducing some new lower level trims because they were worried that maybe they're giving up too much market share in trade for greater profits. So we will probably see an erosion of the profitability in order to regain some market share and customers, but I think they'll be just fine. The other thing
I mean, if you look at Dodge
say,
and Chrysler, the number of unique models that they sell is quite a bit lower, not only than
Yeah.
Jeep, but most manufacturers out there. And so when you're
Hmm.
talking about like, yes, there are, I haven't seen many Dodge Hornets on the road, but I have seen a lot of Grand Cherokees. So,
Yep. We should talk about the Hornet since that was in the question. I got carried away. Hornet, I don't know what to think about Hornet. Hornet is definitely the, you know what, we need a plug-in hybrid. Here's an Italian plug-in hybrid. Let's go for it.
mhm. And
Are
I
they going to sell
prefer
each
the
other? Probably not.
Italian one in the garage, but I wouldn't pay for it.
I
So
am.
that's kind of the
Yeah.
trade-off one.
I think I would go for the Dodge actually because it is less expensive.
Yeah.
Um, I think the look is just a tiny bit better to my eye
Okay.
somehow. Um, and in the segment it's playing in, it is very unique.
Mhm.
In the amount of power you get, the plug-in hybrid ability, etc. Very odd for the North American market.
Yep.
Um, I just wonder how many how many buyers there really are available long term. It seems like there are a decent number though. They're moving a reasonable number of Hornets, more than I thought they would. So pardon me, so far. And that kind of goes with the financial situation at Stellantis. There is this theory that Stellantis is the subprime lender of choice in North America. Also, absolutely not true.
Mhm.
Every
Yeah.
manufacturer sells cars to subprime lending buyers, but by and large, if you don't have a captive finance arm, you don't do that on your own. Like the dealer has to go and find you a subprime lender, which actually drops the number of subprime sales far down. Subprime lending as a percentage of sales is actually much lower at Stellantis than at Honda or Toyota because you can go to a Honda dealer and Honda Financial will lend to lenders. They're not subprime, but they're
Yeah.
just below, and they will do that right at the dealer. You go to a Chrysler dealer, Santander Bank is underwriting that, and they don't want any subprime people. So, Chrysler Financial's just like, we can't lend to you. The dealer has to go find you third-party financing somewhere. So it really, really lowers that number of buyers down, oddly enough. So it does appear that these Hornets, they're finding actual Hornet owners and Hornet
Yeah.
Hornet lovers, if
Well,
that's the
and I
thing.
think you also look at the other models that end up being subprime models, and Stellantis is not ripe with,
Hmm.
maybe just out of reach for a lot of folks. It tends to be farther out of reach, and so you're not going to get a
Yeah,
lot of Grand Cherokees with subprime loans. People just
exactly.
couldn't afford them.
Yeah, and they're certainly not doing that at an average transaction price that's nearly $20,000 higher than a Toyota Highlander, depending on the year you're looking at. I mean, it's their transaction prices are astronomical on some of those models, especially Grand Cherokee L, the Grand Cherokee that actually competes with
Yeah,
Highlander that way.
yeah,
It's fantastically high.
yeah.
So David here is asking us about a car recommendation. Commutes 30 miles round trip on a budget. What would you recommend, Chevy Trax or K5 right now? I am high on the Trax.
I got to look at the new K5, and it was a very nice machine. I would probably lean towards the K5 for my personal taste, but it's nothing against the tracks.
Hmm.
And depending on what kind of equipment is more important to you or what the
It's
use
true.
case is, you're going to have a little more function out of the tracks than you are that K5. You get a little bit more style, I think, out of the K5, and there's
Hmm.
certainly higher performance options on the Kia
Yeah.
side as well. But those are not necessarily what I would put head to head. So it's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, I really like the practicality and especially the price tag of the tracks. It's really hard to go wrong
Yeah.
with something that's barely gets over $20,000. It's very rare. I was actually honestly shocked that Chevy brought back the tracks. That was the first
Hmm.
shocker. And the second
Hmm.
thing that just absolutely blew my mind was the fact that it actually looked good. And the reason it won our value car of the year for 2024 is that not only does it do both of those things, it's actually fun to drive, and they're making a reasonable number of them. So you can actually find a Trax, which is also important. So it's not like the
Yeah.
Versa where Nissan's like, yeah, we still have that Versa thing, but you're never gonna see a Versa advertisement. Nobody's gonna know that it's there. We're not pushing it
Right.
at all, and good luck finding a cheap one. And Chevy is actually stocking base model Traxxas and the one level up from the bottom, etc. I think those are actually really good options.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one too. 38 mil asks, any chance we will see the Wrangler and Gladiator manual with the Hurricane inline six? My guess is no. I am actually curious, and this I don't know if we have a good answer to. I'm curious to see if we will see the Hurricane anytime soon in the Wrangler, because it is such a long engine.
There's no need to do it. Obviously
you got to replace that 392.
Do you though? That's the question, right? I mean, obviously there's gonna be a lot of folks who want you to. The 392 is on its way out. But it's a very different configuration than the inline six. So it would not be the easiest thing to do. You'll certainly see it at SEMA or a Jeep concept, but whether it makes it into production, probably not anytime soon. But there's always a next generation Jeep, so it could be something they account for at that point.
Yeah, I'm gonna go maybe 50-50. We know that Stellantis has said the V8 is dead. So and they've basically left it like, make of that what you will. In every application that they have foreseen, the 5.7, 6.4, and 6.2 will be replaced by the 3-liter inline six. So the factory has actually stopped building V8s. If you are ordering any of the Jeeps, Dodges, etc., that have a V8, know that if you can order one still somehow with the V8, if your dealer will actually let you do that order and it will get fulfilled, do it now, because there has been a bit of a stockpile of engines, so that way certain models can continue the year in production. The Durango, for instance, is continuing the year with the 5.7 for some period of time. We don't know. But if you want a Wrangler 392, your days are limited. Whether it
but so are the buyers.
Yeah. But so whether that replacement will be an inline six Hurricane or whether that replacement is going to be a 4xe with a 2-liter turbo or a different 2-liter turbo, we don't know. My gut guess is that Gladiator and Wrangler will see different electrified variants with the 2-liter turbo because it's going to be easier to jam under the hood. That's just my thought.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. Quick thank you to JSF Bay and Paul for your super chats. Appreciate you guys. I'm not opposed to the 392 and the Jeep. I mean, I think it's ridiculous on top of ridiculous, but they didn't sell that many, and they are incredibly expensive, and they're incredibly expensive to run. So, it's as a car enthusiast, you love seeing the ridiculous from time to time, but I don't think anyone's going to miss it in a hurry because it's not in their driveway when they go to replace their Jeep. It probably wasn't going to be on the list anyway.
Yep. So it's about our time to sunset so we can all turn into pumpkins and roll on home. So thanks everybody for watching another Friday Night Live show. We promise that at some point soon these will be up on the podcast channel so you can listen to the whole thing while you're driving somewhere. As always, find us over on Facebook if you haven't done that there, Twitter, Instagram, all of those social places. And of course, check out the content on EV Buyer's Guide if you haven't. One thing before we go, let's check the status of our poll on where the best place to stick your charge door is. And it looks like
controversial information everyone wants to know.
Controversial information. Looks like only 30% of respondents, we're up to 900 votes now. Only 37% of respondents think that it should be on the rear quarter panel of the vehicle, either side. That's both sides included, right or left. 9% say it should be behind the license plate, like a 1980s Oldsmobile, where you're filling behind the license plate door there. 30% say it should be on the front quarter panel on either side, followed by literally front and center, right in the very, very nose of the vehicle. But by a sweeping margin of 55%, basically the front of the vehicle seems to be where people want it.
My only problem with the front of the vehicle is that's the grossest part of the vehicle on a regular basis. So unless it is a automatic release, I'm not one to get my fingers dirty every time I get to and from the house or the office or whatever else. So that's my only gripe. It's by far the easiest and the most approachable. But I also don't want to have an automatic charge door if I can help it. Just a little spring action is more than enough for me.
I will say we had a Soul EV. This is going to take us back in time. And I loved the location of the charge door in the Soul EV. It really made a lot of sense. It was just, you just aim it and you point it where you want to go to charge it. And it was super easy to plug that thing in. Its door did open nice and wide, so it was easy to actually charge it. But the door did get gross when you closed it because you had to close it yourself. It opened on its own, you had to close it. The Rivian with its little power door in the very front corner, that actually worked pretty well because you don't have to touch it if you don't want to. That was kind of nice. My least favorite location is actually, oddly enough, where it is on every Tesla in North America. It's that driver's side rear left quarter panel. And it's not for reasons that I think some people are thinking of. I mean, obviously, there's the fact you have to back it into a charging stall. Not my favorite. If you look in a parking lot, most people pull in, not back into the charging or to parking spots. So it's much more natural for most drivers. It's actually the reality that we all seem to want improved curbside charging in North America, something that we're seeing more and more of. And after having driven a plug-in hybrid around Europe recently that had its charge door on the Tesla side of things, bad location, where every single time we were charging out and about, it was on a curb and tiny little narrow roads. I saw a decent number of EVs with missing charge doors, charge plugs that had obviously been hit by something that were askew. Why would you ever put it on the driver's side? On the back passenger side, I'm fine with that if that's where you'd rather have it. But think of the cyclists, think of just the interactions with traffic out there, the safety aspect of you needing to be standing sort of in and out of traffic to try and plug your vehicle into the charging on the curbside. And then the fact that cable is, dragged around it, around the curb and the gutter, et cetera, to charge.
It's just that much farther. And
I'm just not a fan of that thing. Keeping it on the passenger side, for me at least, makes a lot of sense. There is this two-sided thing that most of your charging does happen at home, and I will admit this. So like on the flip side, most of your charging happens at home. So having it closer to the driver means fewer steps. But I think on balance, passenger side's probably where I would put it.
I would not put it behind the driver's license plate. People who answered that question don't own EVs because that is the least convenient way to do that.
Come on. Don't you remember Oldsmobiles with the fold down license plate? I mean, that was epic.
Did you fill it up every day? Or maybe a couple times a day?
It was spring loaded. You could have a powered one. You could have a powered license plate down, and then you plug it in. Then there's no charge door. Talk about the ultimate in clean appearances. Right? It's a sleek look. Yeah, right there behind the license plate. Just better yet, it could be somehow integrated into the license plate. The license plate could have some sort of little power slide that just slides, the door that slides over. Your license plate can slide over.
I would rather have a novelty exhaust pipe charge outlet than behind the license plate.
What if bear with me for a hot second? What if
everyone bear with us, please?
What if the license plate was on a powered track and it like a sliding door on a minivan, and the license plate just slid left or right?
As long as it's powered and I don't have to touch it, that
could be epic. Could be powered. It could be sort of motion sensey something. You wave your hand at it or whatever, and it parts. It could be like a license plate barn door, folks. Could be a license plate barn door setup. You could get that going.
Now we're getting into a tailgate conversation, right? Which way does your tailgate open up? Trick license plates.
Yep. Anyway, with that out of the way, be sure and find us on the social media channels, and we'll see all of you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.